Hello, I'm Rose Brazil, and welcome to the test run of Pocky for Thought. Pocky for Thought is this web show that I've been wanting to try out, partly to see how people like it, and partly to see whether or not I can actually be consistent. And what Pocky for Thought is a web show where I talk about topics and things that strike me while I'm watching my favorite form of entertainment, anime. Now, what this test run is going to be is that I'll be talking about what strikes me of the anime that I'm watching for my research, for my contribution to the Golden Anniversary of Anime blogging project, which you can learn more about on the Blogspot blog, goldenannie.blogspot.com, or you could follow the Golden Annie Twitter, or you could follow my own Twitter account, or you could follow Geoff Tebbet's Twitter. Mr. Tebbet's is the one who has organized the project and has put everything together, so he's really the one in charge. I'm just one of the many writers for it. So without further ado, let's talk about what has so far struck me about Lupin III Part 1. When I first started watching the anime with the first episode, I did get the impression that Lupin was supposed to be a thief. I mean, he was being hunted down by police officers, so that kind of makes sense. But it gave off more of a James Bond type feel. Like, even though he wasn't agent for the law or a spy in a legal governmental sense, it still gave the same impression that a James Bond type character would. He's breaking into mastermind villain base, he's rescuing a hot girl, he's doing all this clever tricks to do it. And aside from that, what really struck me and actually took me a little bit by surprise, though now that I've watched more of it, I'm not surprised by it anymore, was just the amount of sexual imagery that came pretty much right off the bat in the first episode, with Fujiko Mine being captured, tied down, and stripped via grabby hand machine, and a lot of, if not actual sexual assault, then threats of sexual assault. There was that little tool thing with the little white rubber hand at the end, which made me kind of flash back to one of the Yu-Gi-Oh chapters when before Yu-Gi-Oh actually got into being a trading card manga and just games in general with a darker tone. But anyway, so the episode continues. It's actually seemed fairly generic shonen, hero saves the lady, James Bond type of story. And maybe it's just because I'm not really used to older anime, and by older I mean beyond what I was watching in the 90s as a kid. Beyond that, I haven't really watched any, so Lupin III is one of the few older animes that I've actually watched. Some of the older ones that I have watched actually only really being as old as Trigun and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Yu-Gi-Oh! Was when I was a kid, so Trigun's a lot more recent. The animation, it actually took me a while to realize that it wasn't as smooth as I'm used to, and with it having come out in 1971, that makes sense, but it wasn't distracting at all, and it's still something that's enjoyable. And I definitely wouldn't call it bad animation. I could see what it wanted me to get out of what it was showing me, and I could follow the show well. It didn't detract from my viewing pleasure, so it just wasn't as smooth or as rounded as I'm really used to. And I can now see how faces being drawn has progressed since then, with even much bigger eyes, and there really isn't any what we would call anime eyes in this. It's just really pretty normal looking eyes. As I continued watching the episodes, I just kept getting struck with how much sexism was in the show, and reminding myself that it came out in the 70s, and that I could also see how the portrayal of women in Lupin III eventually evolves into the portrayal of women in, say, Dragon Ball Z, or Yu-Gi-Oh!, or Trigun, or Yu Yu Hakusho. I can see how it has evolved, and how parts of how Lupin treats women are still sort of present in the later anime, but when it's coming from, it just, for something about Lupin just strikes me as very unpleasant and egotistical, even if we can say that Lupin is more of a product of his time as opposed to actually intentionally being a sexist. Just the way that his relationship with Fujiko works and how difficult it is to tell whether or not Fujiko's reaction to men and how she treats other men in comparison to Lupin, how that works, and whether or not it's more of a product of the creator's understanding or lack of understanding of women, if that's just how that's manifesting, or if she's supposed to be as conflicting a character as she's portrayed, because it seems like with each episode, the way that she presents herself to Lupin and to others keeps changing, and it really hasn't been consistent at all. And it's really only in episodes where she's allowed to be smart and intelligent and really quite clever is when she's allowed to be the same type of character that's introduced in episode 1, which is she's clearly out for her own interests and is willing to use her assets to get what she wants. While that is present in like episode 2, she's not able to take care of herself in a physical sense, and she isn't really able to escape her situation without Lupin's help, despite the fact that Lupin, when it comes to saving Fujiko, hasn't seemed particularly useful at all. And I've only watched up to episode 7, as in I finished episode 7 and we'll be watching episode 8 next time. Fujiko is very adept at saving herself and taking care of herself and escaping situations that she doesn't like, but when the episode kind of requires her to be saved by Lupin, she really doesn't come out better than she would if she had just tried to save herself. And it just seems rather out of character for her to actually wait for Lupin to help her, or that she wouldn't be able to get herself out of a situation. I will buy that she flirts with a lot of different men. That's something that has been consistent throughout each episode. But what's confusing to me is whether or not she's actually telling the truth when she says that, oh, she's so in love with Lupin. And in some episodes, it seems like she's telling the truth. And in other episodes, it seems like she's just saying that so she can get her way. And I would be fine with it being either way if they could just pick one and stick with it and actually develop that more. I know that I'm only 7 episodes in, but it's just that her behavior in regards to Lupin has been very contradictory, and because it's only been 7 episodes, there really hasn't been enough getting to know her to really understand why it's contradictory, and it's just kind of confusing, and I'm not entirely sure yet if it's because of the time period and that's just how women were written, or if that's an inherent flaw in the storytelling, or if there's a greater purpose to that. I guess I'll see that as I continue to watch the show, but that's just been a constant thought that I've been having. Who is Fujiko Mine supposed to be as a character, and how much of her character is reliant on her being a woman, essentially? Especially since this anime is pretty sexist. And that the sexism actually doesn't entirely affect how I enjoy the show, even when I do recognize that an episode is being more sexist than a previous episode. I actually still enjoy it. Any displeasure I have with the show actually comes from Lupin really not being all that likable of a character. And I'm not saying that it's because he's sexist that he's not a likable character. It's more the fact that he literally gets whatever he wants and he feels that it's a crime against nature to prevent him from getting what he wants. The episode that has so far annoyed me the most was episode 4, where he basically spends a year in prison waiting for the right time to break out, and the only reason he doesn't do it sooner is because he wants to make the inspector feel stupid, basically. Wound his pride. And he doesn't even really give any thought to how Fujiko feels about it, or how Jigen feels about it, or anything else, or how... In fact, he doesn't even seem to care that this plot of his is going to end up killing someone. It's just such a self-centered thing to do, and maybe it's just... And the anime frames him in such a way that it makes me feel like I'm supposed to like this person, this character, and I just can't. At first, it was kind of like, oh, he's your typical shonen protagonist. He's a guy, likes the ladies, but up until this episode, I could see parts of him that would indicate that he's inherently a good person. However, this episode, it felt very in character for Lupin to do this, and that was the frustrating part. It didn't feel like it was a manifestation of a expectation of a man during the time period. It felt like it was an actual part of Lupin's character, which is very different from Vash the Stampede and Trigun being a ladies' man, because that is actually something that the anime added. He's a chase hero in the manga, but the anime made him into, I think the TV trope page called him a perverted hero. Only in certain episodes would I really call Vash a pervert. In others, he's just kind of a lovable dork who really likes women. But I'm getting slightly off topic. The point is that part, the perverted part of Vash's personality, is an anime construct that makes him fit more into the pervert hero archetype that you see in Naruto and Jiraiya. It's been so long since I've watched Naruto that I've forgotten how to pronounce certain names. But anyway, characters in Naruto and in other anime where that's a thing, where you're still a hero and you're still a good person, you just have urges and you get slapped in the face for it, like you should be. Though probably you should be reported to the police instead, but since it's supposed to be a comedy or something. So, while with Vash, it's very obvious that that's a construct that's made by the anime only, and that doesn't actually fit into his personality. So it actually doesn't bother me as much, because even though it's canon, it isn't really real. With Lupin, even though it wasn't in previous episodes and contradicts what he has done in past episodes, it felt very real, and there's a lot of parts of it in the episodes after that where he really doesn't, there really isn't much explanation as to why he's trying to steal certain things, or why he's trying to get it, or what purpose it gives him, but he wants it anyway, whatever it is, whether it's the scrolls in episode 7, or whatever it is in episode 6. I don't really remember episode 6, even though I saw it like yesterday. What I remember from it is that it felt a lot like episode 4 did. It just really rubbed me the wrong way, and I haven't really been able to enjoy Lupin as a character since then. But I really love Jigen and Goemon. Jigen is the character archetype that I really like. He's the loyal best friend who, even when he thinks that the main character's being a dummy, he's still going to help him, and he's still going to be there, and he knows the main character like the back of his own hand, and he also doesn't really take, he doesn't take shit from Lupin either. He calls him out when he's being stupid, questions him when he doesn't like this. Something doesn't sound right. Jigen is a very likable character, and when Fujiko is being written in a way that makes more sense with her previous depictions in past episodes, but especially in episode 1, which gives us the impression of her character and how we're supposed to expect her to behave in later episodes. When Fujiko fits into what I am expecting from her character, both she and Jigen make the show very entertaining to watch, especially since often Fujiko will often keep you guessing as to what her motivation is. And having her motivation, trying to guess her motivation is much different from being frustrated with the inconsistencies of her character representation. Because she can have flip-flopping motivations all she wants, as long as her character core is the same. But in certain episodes, it's almost as though she changes personality, and that's very weird. I like Jigen. I sometimes like Fujiko. I really like Goemon, even though he's only been in about 3 episodes so far. Or maybe it's only 2. It's only 2. I really like Goemon, and I also really like the, it's almost a debate that his character introduces, because he's a very traditional samurai, and he strongly values his sword skills and the traditional Japanese way, and that any Japanese who allow themselves to be overly westernized aren't real Japanese. Even though Lupin says that he's a very different or strange Japanese man, he says that no, he is the normal one. They are the abnormal ones. And I like the juxtaposition of the very traditional Goemon and the obviously westernized Lupin. And I just find it very interesting that these characters have been fighting in these 2 episodes that I've seen Goemon in, and have actually become friends at the end of episode 7. It's something that I recognize is a very important debate with modern Japanese culture, what with the Meiji Restoration and what happened after World War II. And it is very important for people in general, but in this case specifically the Japanese, to keep a hold of how they came to be what they are today, though that doesn't necessarily mean that it's something I recognize is a very important, and while I haven't done enough research to fully be able to discuss this topic as intellectually as I would like, it is something that I recognize that as important, and recognize that it's a good thing and something that's important to. It's important, and that's part of the reason why I like Goemon as a character, though the other parts is that I would also say that Goemon's sexist, but he's sexist in a way that it's not good, but I can respect where he's coming from, if that makes sense. He's wanting to be an honorable person. Honor is very important to him. He has a certain set of ethics. It's not that he thinks less of Fujiko because she's a woman, but it's more that he has a certain way of living and he wants to uphold that. Certain expectations of Fujiko might be altered, but I think that might be more from I did this, now you should respect that decision, I think. I have only watched 2 episodes, so I really don't know. But it's less infuriating than when it comes from Lupin, because episode 7 with Lupin and Fujiko. Okay, Fujiko is in disguise, but at first you're not entirely sure it's Fujiko. I mean, she kinda looks like Fujiko, and really she's only Fujiko in a black wig. So it makes sense that Lupin would be able to tell that it's Fujiko, because he's a master disguise, and that's kind of a dumb disguise. But it's really not confirmed right away, especially when you don't really have any reason to believe that Fujiko is a swords master or a sword fighter, and her response to Lupin hitting on her is attempt to stab him in the eye with her short sword. And then Lupin thinks, oh, maybe it's not her. But he's still trying to hit on her as though she was Fujiko, and she keeps rejecting him. And then she is flirting with Goemon and hanging all over him and other sexy woman stuff. And Lupin's reaction to it is as though he's watching a faithful girlfriend cheat on him with the hot samurai. And he makes such a big deal out of it, and it's really weird to see that, especially since you don't know for sure if this is Fujiko. And even if it was Fujiko has never been a faithful girlfriend and really hasn't been his girlfriend. She's been a woman that he flirts with and hits on and tries to touch, and her response to a lot of the touching has been a vase to the head and a lot of protests. And I will buy that Fujiko does flirt with him and that she is probably sexually attracted to Lupin, but he's just such a geese about it, and it's like, you don't own this woman. I mean, what is wrong with you? You're not even dating. She's not your girlfriend. This is not a normal reaction. You're not married. This is not a... She has lots of guys, and you know this. Why is this special? Why is this getting this reaction from him? Especially when he's flirting with pretty much any woman he comes across, like Linda in episode 3. I know she only lasts one episode, but still. It just gives me another reason to dislike Lupin as a character. So really the only thing that's making watching Lupin the Third Part 1 enjoyable is the supporting characters. Fujiko, when her character isn't being weird. Jigen, who's so my favorite right now. And Goemon, who is definitely my second favorite, because he's very interesting and gives me something else to think about other than the inherent sexism of Lupin the Third. I will be finishing the series. I might be watching Part 2 if it also came out in 1971. If it didn't, and if it turns out I really don't like the show, I probably won't. I'll make another video once I've seen some more episodes, maybe 7 more, and then talk about what I thought of those episodes. Once I'm done watching Lupin the Third Part 1 and I was able to stay consistent with making these videos, I will make the more official Pocky for Thought web show, and it'll be slightly less structured in terms of topic. It'll be more broad. Like, I'll talk about whatever strikes me about what anime I've been watching or rewatching, or I've just in general been thinking about. There's a couple of ideas from Durarara, Trigun, Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Ouran High School Host Club, Bakano, Blue Exorcist, an assortment, whatever I'm watching. And you, as my audience, will of course be welcome to suggest anime, continue discussing this with me, maybe bringing up things that I haven't personally thought about, and comments or video responses. I highly encourage this. I just really like talking about things and discussing them and learning things about the stuff that I like. I just really look forward to exploring these ideas further, especially with other people who like talking about this type of thing too. So if you have also watched Lupin the Third, leave in the comments what you think of the characterization, how women are treated, or how women, or really just Fujiko because she's the only consistent female character. But if you want to talk about women in general in Lupin the Third, or in general in anime, feel free to leave a comment. If you want to talk about Japanese culture as presented in anime, and you can talk about that too. If you have suggestions for future episodes, if this works out, leave them in the comments too. Or video responses, those are good too. And I think that's it. Talk to you, Gold!